Just ahead on American Black Journal, Wayne State University celebrates a milestone anniversary. Plus, people with disabilities urge political candidates to listen to their concerns. And the CEO of Goodwill Industries talks about growing the workforce. Don't go away. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
For nearly 100 years, Ally has been a part of Detroit, and we give back by volunteering and donating in our community. We have a commitment to diversity and increasing economic mobility in our hometown. At Ally, we're dedicated to doing it right every single day.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. We're coming to you from the Business Leaders for Michigan CEO Summit at Cobo Center in downtown Detroit. This annual event brings together top business and community executives to talk about improving Michigan's economy. My first guest is one of the leaders who's attending the summit. He's vice president at Wayne State University, which is celebrating its 150th year in the heart of Detroit. I'd like to welcome Patrick Lindsay to American Black Journal. Good to see you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, so let's talk about Wayne State and its 150th anniversary. You know, I have to say this snuck up on me somehow, right? I don't think I realized we were that close, but certainly this is a critical institution in the city of Detroit, always been right there in the center of the city, but has seen a lot of change over that 150 years, not just to the university, but to the city itself.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on. Wayne State University celebrating that 150 year sesquicentennial is a great word, by the way. Started out as Detroit Medical College. At the end of the Civil War, treating soldiers who were coming back from the fight. Has its roots in Detroit, still in Detroit, and over that 150 years has grown to be one of the nation's top urban public research schools, top 50 in the country, one of 3 Tier 1 research schools here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah. So what are the things that the university is looking at this 150th year, the ways that it's celebrating all of that time here in Detroit?
Well, we just ended a celebration Friday, a part of it being looking back and looking at all the things that have been achieved over those 150 years, but our president, Dr. Roy Wilson, not only wanted to look back, but also talked about looking forward. And so he, along with the university leadership and the faculty, have done a great job in improving graduation rates, initiating programs that enhance student success, looking at ways we can address health outcomes in the city of Detroit. Phenomenal things on the horizon for Wayne State in the coming 150 years.
Yeah, that diversity question is one that comes up a lot, and we've seen all of the major public institutions in the state struggle with that question. Wayne State gets more pressure, I think, because it's here in the city of Detroit, and it's seen as a gateway opportunity for so many people. Is that something that the university feels it has its hands firmly around, that question of access and opportunity, or are there still challenges that it needs to work on?
Well, Dr. Wilson says unequivocally, and he said it in his inaugural address and he said it again last week, he believes that Wayne State can be a school of opportunity and a school of excellence, that they're not mutually exclusive. And Wayne State has in its DNA keeping its doors open a little bit wider and allowing for those, particularly those who are economically challenged or maybe people of color who have been denied opportunity. Wayne State is a place where they can come and grow and thrive.
Yeah, the university's place in the city, it looks different to me now than it did when I was making my college choice back in the 1980s. That neighborhood, Midtown, has changed a lot. The university's relationship, I think, to that neighborhood has changed a lot. Talk about how geography sort of defines a lot of the things that are going on at Wayne State.
Well, one of the things you'll find is that we don't have a fence line.
Right, right.
And so many
Which
of
is
our
unusual
buildings.
for an urban university. I'm not sure people in Detroit always understand that, but
Right.
you go to a lot of other cities, the universities within them have fences around them, and that's to keep people out.
Well, we always like to say Detroit is our campus,
Mhm.
and in so many ways that's true, not only simply from geography, but we have so many partnerships within the Midtown, downtown, and even across Detroit. But being in the heart of Detroit, investing in some of the buildings that we have, it's helped catalyze the growth that you see. When you see cities growing in the urban core, you usually see healthcare and higher education being right in the middle of it all.
Right,
So
right.
Wayne State has done that here in Detroit.
Yeah, you're here at the CEO Summit,
Mhm.
Business Leaders for Michigan. Wayne State is also about to change the way that it deals with its business students. The
Mhm.
Mike Ilitch School of Business is going up very quickly, it looks like, next to Little Caesars Arena. Talk about how that will change the experience for students who are studying business.
Wow, to be in a school in the center of the business district of an urban city like Detroit with growing opportunities couldn't get much better. Our students have direct access to CEOs and other leaders in business, as well as intern opportunities. But more importantly, the Ilitch family, through their gift, we also started within our School of Business a sports and hospitality management program where our students will now be able to deal directly with the 4 sports teams and some of the hospitality industry and get firsthand knowledge and be interacting on a regular basis with those businesses.
Yeah, and it's a good example of the growth I feel like the university is experiencing as well. I see cranes on campus every so often, and that's different. You're building dorms. I understand for the students, that's a real shift.
Yes.
For the university.
Yes, we know that as Detroit has become an attractive place for many, particularly for young people and students, the same thing. And we're busting at the seams. We have more demand now for housing than we have housing.
Then you have space.
The apartments that you see going up, phase 1 has been completed, over 400 beds, another 400 will come online next August. Hopefully we'll be doing some more building.
Yeah. What are some of you talk about the future, and President Wilson likes to talk about the future. What are some of the things that urban universities you think will face in the near future? I talk all the time to people about the ways in which the federal government, the state government are sort of pulling back on the support for higher ed that we've seen historically. Urban universities like Wayne, that it hurts more. It's a bigger crisis. What are some of the things you see in terms of having to meet those head on in the near future?
Well, you're right. Unfortunately, public urban schools, they have a different mission, and so you have people who usually are less traditional than many who go to 4-year schools that are not in urban cores. And so they're working, they have family issues, so it may take a little longer to get out of school. And yet they're graded by the same graduation rates as others. And so we typically suffer because of that in terms of how the scoring metrics go. But at the same time, Wayne State's committed to our mission, and Dr. Wilson says we're going to continue our mission under his leadership.
Do you feel as though the state is prepared to make the commitment it needs to institutions like Wayne to do the things that it needs to do?
Well, I can say that when I first came in, it was a 15% across the board cut in higher ed.
Right.
Governor Snyder from that time has begun reinvesting
building that back in.
Building it up, but we're still well below where things were in 2011. And if you adjust the dollars for inflation, the schools are still behind. As a state, we still need to invest more. In fact, BLM, during their summit, they've been calling for $100 million a year for the next 10 years just to catch back up to where Michigan ought to be.
All right, well, we'll stay after that. Congratulations again on 150 years. It's a really great
Thank you.
milestone.
And congratulations to you all on 50 years.
Yeah, that's right. Just a little fraction of the time you guys have been around, right? Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Just ahead, people with disabilities want their voices heard this election year. But first, we continue our look back at this program over the last 50 years. Here's a 1989 Detroit Black Journal discussion on efforts by Wayne State students to get an Africana Studies program at the university.
In terms of your major accomplishment, this Department of Africana Studies, some people have criticized that particular action and said, shouldn't you have been pushing more to include more African studies in the broader curriculum, perhaps require that all freshmen, black and white, take a particular class, rather than working on beefing up this one department? Is that kind of segregationist in attitudes?
Of course not. It's not segregationist. The assumption, the underlying assumption there is that these courses in this department is closed to all students with the exception of African Americans. And that is just an outright lie. I heard a white student say on television the other day that he thought that we were being separatists and segregationists by asking for a Department of Africana Studies. But I ask, is it separatist or segregationist to ask for a Department of French, a French department? Is it only open to French people? I doubt so seriously. The same with Department of Near Eastern and Asian Studies. They're not open only to people from the Near East or from Asia. And by the same token, this department is open to every student, Hispanics, Native Americans, Eskimos, whoever wants to take the courses in Africana Studies. I think that the department, being part of the university, is integrated into the school. I don't
What about the charge that over the last few years the funding has actually increased for the Center for Black Studies?
Well, the funding has increased from $132,000 to $163,000. It's still one of the most underfunded departments or centers in the entire school. It's one of the most underfunded units, with the exception, I think, of the Department of Chicano-Boricua Studies. That's nothing to get excited about.
We all know there's a lot at stake in this year's elections, and people with disabilities are urging politicians to listen to their concerns. The Disability Network Wayne County, Detroit held a forum last month to let candidates hear firsthand about the issues impacting the disabled, senior citizens, and veterans. The organization educates and connects their clients with services such as transportation, housing, and healthcare. I'm pleased to welcome the executive director of the Disability Network, Lori Hill Sanders, to American Black Journal. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, I actually think this is an issue that most politicians do very poorly on. Even when they're right in the way that they legislate or direct or manage on it, they're terrible at talking about these issues, at putting them front and center and saying, we could do things maybe a little differently for this population, and that's okay.
Yeah. And as a part of my job, that is a part of what I do. I have to build ongoing relationships with our state legislators, and it becomes difficult because their positions are termed. So every
term, not there that long now.
So every term you have to learn a new group, a new set. But it's an ongoing process that's a part of the advocacy that we do, is building and maintaining those relationships with our state legislators.
And how receptive do you find them to the idea that they have to think differently?
The key thing is if it hits home. You know, if they have a senior, an aging parent, or if they have a child that has a disability, and I think that pretty much that's with a lot of things. It has to really hit home for that individual, whether it's a CEO that I'm trying to get funds from, or whomever, or another organization that I'm partnering with. They need to have that passion, and it has to be a situation that's very near and dear to them.
So let's talk about some of the issues that your clients are concerned that politicians are not addressing this cycle. What's on the list?
One of the key issues, mobility, is a key issue for individuals with disabilities. Just being able to have access to being able to navigate where they need to navigate to within the city, outside of the city. That is a key issue that needs to definitely be addressed.
Yeah.
And then affordable housing is another issue that is very, it's a key factor for individuals with disabilities.
Yeah. And where are we with, so the mobility question
Yes.
ties into transit.
Yes,
in
it
particular,
does.
we do a poor job of transit overall in Southeast Michigan. Do we do a particularly poor job of mobility access for
Well, there is
disabled?
paratransit for individuals with disabilities, and I have a number of my board members that are disabled, and they utilize paratransit so that they're able to navigate and do the things that they need to do. They have a lot of challenges. Sometimes our board meeting ends at 6 o'clock. They're waiting until 7:30 for their transit to come pick them up and take them back home. I have an individual that works at our center, Sarah. She's visually impaired. We close at 4:30. I typically work late. Sometimes I can leave at 7 o'clock and Sarah's still sitting there waiting for transportation to pick her up.
Yeah.
So it's a critical issue.
Yeah. And when we are having these debates about transit, which we had one a couple of years ago, and the proposal failed, but they tried to take another run at it this year. Did you feel like there was enough attention during that debate on access for the disabled or senior citizens?
You know, when I talk with my consumers that have that mobility is a challenge, they feel that it's not. But let me say this to you, with any disability, a person does not realize that they have a disability until they encounter a barrier with what it is that they're trying to do. So sometimes I have to look at the situation as to how my consumers are dealing with it to really be able to relate. And then I'm able to identify the things that we have to advocate for as an organization in regards to that issue.
Yeah. The other issue you mentioned was affordable housing.
Yes.
That's a huge issue for a lot of people.
Yes.
Talk about the special challenges to senior citizens or the disabled with affordable
Well,
housing.
the special challenges with that is that Disability Network, as also with our other 15 sister centers that are within the state of Michigan, we all come from the premise or the foundation or belief that individuals should be able to live independently. We do not advocate for guardianship, institutionalization. We try to remove individuals out of those situations so that they can live independently on their own.
Yeah.
So if you have an individual that's in a nursing home that's disabled and they want to come back into the community, which we're very strong advocates for, sometimes finding housing that is affordable for them is very challenging. And I mean decent housing,
Right.
where they can feel safe and it's not deplorable conditions. And that's a very big challenge if you're an individual that you have a fixed income based on your disability and you have to live off of this. And not only live off of this, you have to be able to make sure your utilities are paid, medications, whatever additional things that you have to pay for during that month.
Yeah.
And that's why we even have a program for individuals to have an independent living situation where they go into an apartment and they live for 2 weeks, and we work with them to help them develop their independent living skills. We help them with financial literacy so that they know how to budget what they're getting based on that fixed amount that they get each month. And that is kind of like that model or that mock situation to actually put them in the situation and give them as much hands-on experience as we can as living independently.
One of the things I think is sort of critically important is the idea of that messenger at a really high level of government, somebody who really gets it and can say, these are really important issues and we need to pay attention to them. And I'm thinking here of Brian Calley, who's the lieutenant governor now, who's done amazing work for kids who have autism and other kinds of disabilities. Do you see somebody else maybe emerging because he's going to leave office? Is there somebody else who you think might be that new vessel for that message?
I don't know who that is right now, but in January, right now is after November, when I see who's in place, that's when you start doing your research with your individuals that are your legislators, and you start seeing what commonalities, what's going to be passionate for them, and you and I think it's going to be very important starting a new term. Education is so important, and that's what we're going to start doing as a network, is educating our legislators, because once individuals are educated, they can actually become an advocate for you.
Right.
And that's
the
the
first
key.
step.
Yes.
All right, well, great work, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Finally today, the leaders here at the CEO Summit are taking part in conversations about keeping Michigan competitive in a global economy. Recently, I sat down with Dan Varner, who's the CEO of Goodwill Industries of Greater Detroit, to hear how his organization is preparing Detroiters for the jobs of the future. Say Goodwill to most people, and they think of the place where they drop old clothes or old furniture they don't need. But Dan Varner, Goodwill CEO, explains that the organization is so much more. It's on the front lines of the push to get more Detroiters ready for work, and they prepare between 9,000 and 10,000 people a year to enter the job market.
So of course we do run the iconic thrift stores, which come out of Reverend Edgar Helms' work in Boston years and years and years ago, well over 100 years ago now, that created the thrift store model. But we also, here at Goodwill Industries of Greater Detroit, we're a Tier 1 auto supplier. We run a light assembly and kitting business that serves all of the major manufacturers. And we also run a wholly owned subsidiary called Goodwill's Greenworks that does industrial recycling and asset recovery work for DTE Energy and a bunch of other local companies. So when there's a thunderstorm and the wires come down, we actually take those wires, and if they can be reused, we prepare them for reuse, and if not, we strip them down to their component parts and sell those on the commodity market for DTE.
And the work that Goodwill does is complicated by the real deficits that people bring with them to job training. Goodwill does a lot of work with both returning citizens, those who've been to jail and are coming home, and those who are sent to Goodwill to get training and a job rather than go serve time behind bars. Their challenges are staggering.
I don't know your story, Antonio. How long have you been here?
2013, actually November be 5 years.
Yeah, is that right? Well, congratulations.
Wow.
Yeah. So we
And how
test
did you find
everybody
us?
who we serve, and most of these young men and women are reading at a 4th or 5th grade level and doing math at a 3rd or 4th grade level. And that's kind of regardless of what their actual credential may be. Some of them may have actually graduated from high school, but still are performing at that level. And that's kind of our typical educational attainment level for folks. 99% of them are unbanked, don't have a bank account, never have had a bank account, are not employed. Most of them are homeless or near homeless. So they're literally couch surfing or living out of a car if they happen to have one. Speaking of cars, most of them don't actually have access to a car, much less actually drive one. We're talking about 30% or so max with access to a car or actually driving one. Many we're happily getting these resolved now, but with driver responsibility fees and the like, if they did have a license, so that license has been suspended. And the list goes on, like real fundamental challenges to actually getting into the world of work.
Varner is certain about the ways in which the deficits he sees at Goodwill were developed. I sort of want you to think a little bit about the relationship between the work you're doing now with the population you're serving now and the work that you used to do as part of Excellent Schools Detroit, trying to make sure that kids in this city get the educational opportunities that they're supposed to. In my mind, they're not unrelated. This is sort of two ends of the same spectrum.
That's exactly right. I actually tell, when folks say, well, how did you end up at Goodwill? Because my background, I'm an attorney, but my work background really is youth development and then this education policy work. And they say, well, Goodwill, that doesn't really make sense. And I say, no, it's exactly the same. I've been working with the same group of people, for 20 years. I've just followed them from childhood to young adulthood. And the work is very similar. We do education work, and personal development work is a big part of the work that we're doing with the populations that we serve. So it is very similar work. And of course, maybe most plainly, we serve many folks who our education system failed. And when I say our
You're
education,
picking up the slack
that's right,
for
that's
something
right.
that wasn't done before.
That's right.
Varner is sure about who's to blame for those failures.
I blame all of us for the failure of our education system collectively. It is a public responsibility. And everybody, every person who is watching this show right now, and both of us, are all equally responsible for the mess that we've made of our public education system in the state.
And he is just as sure about the mistakes we have made.
When the state lifted the cap on charter schools, my issue actually with that in hindsight is not that the cap was lifted. It was that it was done so without regard to quality, without regard to performance. We had an opportunity in that moment to actually raise the bar on the performance of our charter schools, which I think in turn would have raised the bar for the performance of all of our schools in some respects.
That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can go to AmericanBlackJournal.org to get information about our guests and to check out a calendar of upcoming events. And you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
For nearly 100 years, Ally has been a part of Detroit, and we give back by volunteering and donating in our community. We have a commitment to diversity and increasing economic mobility in our hometown. At Ally, we're dedicated to doing it right every single day.